Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 18th episode of the Masters with Harshith Podcast. This is a very special episode. So, before we begin, if you have not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button right now. So, let's get on to today's episode. It's super interesting, and I am super excited for this. We have with us Kumar. Hi, Kumar. How are you?
Hi, Harshit. I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me to your wonderful podcast.
Thank you, Kumar. Those were kind words. So, for those of you who are interested to know what we're going to cover today, it's called the MPA program at Columbia, which is the Masters in Public Administration program. And our guest today is a very special one. He is an IRS officer in the Indian government or the Department of Finance, IRS, which is the Indian Revenue Services. And the way you enter it is after you clear the very, very difficult UPSC exam. So through this conversation, we are going to talk not just about the MPA program, but about the whole UPSC idea as well. So I'm super excited to get started.
That's great. Yeah.
So Kumar, why don't you talk about your journey, right? So I saw that you've done your undergraduate. You're an engineer by trade,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
you've done your thing at DTU.
Yes.
So what was that like to move into UPSC and like that too? As an IRS or the Indian Revenue Services, I would imagine that's a lot of finance and accounting and more commerce kind of thing. So what was that transition like for you? Why did you do that? Like what made you?
I mean, see, this is not some sort of an unnatural transition. I think most of the Indians
Interesting.
go through this transition because, see, maybe 30, 40 years back, if you want to do a graduation, you might be graduating in history, geography, or some sort of humanities. But later on, with this
Correct.
economic reforms and everything, and then the IT boom also happened. So a lot of focus was on getting an engineering degree because that sort of provided some job security also, right? Because UPSC
Correct.
again, of course, we will be talking a lot about it. But UPSC as an exam is a difficult exam. It's hard work plus luck,
Absolutely.
right? So you always
Correct.
wanted to have like an anchor or a plan B, if you want to call it. Okay, so I was pretty sure before I even started my engineering degree, I was pretty sure that I'm going to write the civil services examination. But what if I'm not able to do that?
Wow.
So you always needed a
Right.
plan to fall back on, and that was my plan B. Okay, so my father was also very particular about it
Right.
that in any case, to appear for the civil services exam, you have to have an undergrad degree, right? So why not pursue in
Correct.
something that will also give you a sense of security that in the worst case scenario, if you're not able to qualify the exam, at least you'll have a good degree in your hand
Right.
and you can actually go in the market. So that was the thing. And
Wow.
yeah, so yeah.
Right. I mean, that's very interesting. And Kumar, and one additional thing I wanted to it's interesting that your backup option itself was such a good
Yeah,
option. DCE, like Delhi College of Engineering, now DTO is a fantastic
yeah.
school. So I think that, speaks more about your caliber as an individual than anything else. So, Kumar, you're mentioning that you were interested to enter civil services even before you did your engineering, right? So what was that thought process in your head? Was there any inspiration around you, or like what made you, figure out that you wanted to do that?
And that's a very interesting question. For that, I'll tell you a brief about my background. So I come from a very small
Sure.
place. It's called Forbisganj. It's in the state of Bihar on the
Okay.
India-Nepal border.
Mm-hmm.
And Bihar, as you would know,
Okay.
happens to be one of the most underdeveloped states, or one of the most, one of the poorest state in our country, in India. And of course, it
Correct.
has come a
Correct.
long way in the past couple of decades. But when I was growing up in Bihar,
Right.
it was literally in shambles. The law and order, the infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
and the overall economic well-being of the state was in a pathetic state. And I don't hold myself
Right.
in saying anything negative because that was the state of life in Bihar,
Absolutely. It
right?
is correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And if you really want to come out of that precarious state of being, you needed to have some options.
Mm-hmm.
What options did you have? For example, if you are growing up in a state like Karnataka or Tamil Nadu, you know that, okay, there will be some IT
Mm.
companies, there are private companies, there are manufacturing hubs located in your state where you can get an employment or you can actually,
Correct.
move up that hierarchy, that social hierarchy or the economic hierarchy. But for a lower middle
Right.
class family like mine, there was no other option. The only way possible to come out of that state of being was to enter the civil services or if you are very aspirational,
Wow.
then you want to enter the civil services. If you're less aspirational, then you might be willing to join any government service, or you might enter the banking sector,
Mm,
right? So that was the thing. So my father always knew this thing, that if you really want to change your destiny and bring out your family, and achieve some sort of social economic status, if you are hailing from Bihar,
correct.
then the only
Right.
way was to sort of inspire me to appear for the civil services exam. So that's the kind of background that why I wanted to qualify the civil services, because it was ingrained in
Hmm.
me since my early childhood. Maybe when I was in second stand, my father used to tell me that one day you have to crack the civil services. So that was sort of fossilized in my
Wow.
mind that, okay, this is the way to go.
Absolutely. I think, this kind of, again, like going back to like, what we had, the conversation we were having before the recording about the 12th fail movie,
Yeah,
right? It sounds like a lot like
yeah,
that, where, your people like usually in who see the ground level, like, who are in the villages and towns of India, who see the hardships, they are like destined to do something that will change, the things around
yeah.
them. So, uh, Kumar, what, how do you prepare for the UPSC exam? So obviously, so I think there are three steps, right? You first have your prelims, and then you have your
Yes,
mains, and then you finally have the interview.
yes,
So what was that process like? And like, how did you like study by yourself? Did you go for coaching? What was that like for you?
yeah. See, there are, I mean, again, the story of each aspirant, each candidate in the UPSC is different, and so mine is also a little different,
Absolutely.
unique in a sense. So the first question, that how exactly did I prepare for UPSC? So the journey of your UPSC preparation actually starts much before you realize that you are starting your preparation. So if you think that, okay, this is the hard stop, okay,
Interesting.
once I graduate and then I want to prepare for civil services, that happens in many cases. But in my case, I
Hmm.
always try to develop that aptitude for this exam. So even when I was in my
Right.
undergrad and in my plus two, in my school days also, I used to read newspapers, try to make sense of things which were happening around me in terms of current affairs, in terms of
Mm,
political, social, and economic development. So it's like inculcating that aptitude within you, so that when you start your journey, your hardcore civil services preparation journey, you are not taken aback. Because see, again,
correct.
UPSC being a difficult exam, it's because of three reasons. Okay, the first is the content
Hmm.
of the exam itself, because the syllabus is so huge, it's
Hmm.
humongous. I mean, everything under the sun: world history, geography, economics, international
Correct.
security, internal security, international security, relations, and then ethics, integrity. It's like the syllabus is so huge, it's very easy
Wow.
to get overwhelmed by it. Okay, so that's one of the reasons that this
Correct.
examination is considered to be one of the most difficult on the planet. So that's the content part. So
Right.
unless you start
Correct.
having that aptitude early on to inculcate all those things, to sort of start sinking in with all that knowledge, is it becomes very overwhelming.
Hmm.
That's the first thing, the content. then the
Makes sense.
then the sheer competition. Think about it. Each year, more than 1 million students appear for this exam. Okay, and how many
Wow.
qualify? 1,000. So that's a success rate of less than 0.1%. Okay, so even
Wow. For
though,
sure.
for example, if the syllabus of UPSC were for say like 1/10 of what it is today, even then it would be very difficult to crack this
Mm,
exam, because there's so much competition. There are so many people who are competing with you. Okay,
absolutely.
so second is the
Correct.
the competition, and third is the structure of the exam. Think about it. Structure is
Hmm.
like, you have prelims, you appear for prelims, then you go for mains, then you interview. This itself is a 1 year process. And what happens if you don't
Right.
crack the interview? Then you start from zero. Okay, so it's like a snakes and ladders game.
Wow.
Okay, since this entire
Correct.
process takes 1 year, by the time you realize that you have not been able to crack the exam, your prelims is in 1 month.
Right.
You hardly get any breathing space to
Wow.
sit and
Correct.
contemplate about the future or about other options. So these three factors make UPSC a
Right.
very difficult exam. And coming back to the primary question, sorry, I'm taking a little long to answer this question. That
No, no,
yeah,
I think it's completely
yeah,
fine. It's very
yeah.
interesting.
So
So,
so
yeah.
so 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 that's why, unless you have that understand that, okay, these are the quirks of this exam, and these are some of the vital dimensions and aspects, it becomes very overwhelming. I have seen many people going in, and
Right.
and then they realize, no, it's not my cup of tea. Okay, but at the same time, you have to
Correct.
realize that
Correct.
this exam is same for everyone. Okay, it's not like this exam is different for
Hmm.
someone else, and it treats someone else differently. It's the same exam for everyone, but how you approach this exam makes all the difference. Yeah,
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So, Kumar, I have a personal question. Like, I mean, a question that was always that a lot of people talk about as well.
yeah,
So I've heard that Bihar is one state which produces the most number of successful UPSC
yes,
candidates, but we still see that Bihar as a state is still taking a lot of time to develop.
yeah,
So, like, what things do you see there that is actually causing? Because we have excellent, IAS, IFS, IPS, IRS officers all the way down in south of India hailing from
yeah.
Bihar. So, like, what is the reason that you see why that's happening?
No, that's a very, very good question, and that's a very common question also. I get this question asked.
Correct. Yeah.
Many people have asked me this question. It's very difficult to answer that. See,
Right.
uh,
Hmm.
if you ask my perspective, I think we lose that sense of connection when we are growing up in Bihar. There is a lot of resentment
Hmm.
against the system. You think about it. If you are
Okay.
growing in a milieu which has always created stumbling blocks for you, okay, and I'm not saying this in a
Hmm.
strictly negative sense, but then, for example, think about a student who is
Absolutely.
growing up in Bihar, or who was growing up in Bihar. Let me tell you,
Hmm.
now the situation in Bihar is much better. I mean, the education, the health, infrastructure, everything has
Absolutely.
improved a lot, in the past couple of decades. But
Sure.
I'm talking about the Bihar of the 90s when I was
Correct.
growing up there. So when you are growing up in
Hmm.
that milieu and you see that there are hardly any hospitals, there are hardly any schools. If you want to study, from a good college, you actually have to come out of Bihar.
Hmm.
Okay. If you want to go to a good boarding
Right.
school, you have to come out of Bihar. If you want a good job in
Right.
a
For sure.
private company, you have to come out of Bihar. So if the
Hmm.
state is always pushing you, the push factor is like, it's a negative push factor, right? So the state is always pushing
Correct.
you outside. Okay. Once you have
Right.
reached that level, once you have reached that, that step, you have gone out of the state, and now
Hmm.
you start having a good life. There is hardly any pull factor. Once, okay,
Correct.
again, I must qualify that I'm not making a generic statement about everyone. Okay, there are many
For
there are
sure.
many good
Sure. Sure.
bureaucrats, there are many good
Yeah.
civil servants who have actually, who are contributing in one way or the other, either being on the ground. If they are posted in Bihar, for example, then they are doing some tremendous work, and that is
Hmm.
something which is visible in the past a couple of decades. But in general, I am saying, in
Right.
general, this sense of disenchantment in the growing years, kind of takes you further from the state. You hardly develop that love and affection that you have. Take my example. I studied
Right.
till matriculation, like till 10th standard, I was in Bihar. Okay. Till 10th, you
Hmm.
hardly develop any sense of belongingness to a place. Okay. It's in your
Correct. Makes sense.
adolescence when you are in, doing your plus two, you have your friend circle, you see things in your college, you start to, gain that sense of belonging from a place, right? But after 10th,
Right.
the the cream of Bihar, the people who are actually meritorious
Hmm.
and who don't want to, stay back in that rut, they actually come out of Bihar after 10th standard. What's their age?
Hmm.
Say 14 years,
Right.
15 years. And after that, they have spent like 10 years, 15 years in a different city, like say Delhi or Mumbai or Hyderabad or Bangalore. Okay. So
Hmm.
that sense of
Right.
belongingness is now, taken away by some other place. You got it? So today
Correct. You have a new thing replacing it
exactly,
with a
yes. And that place has given
right.
you so many things. For example, if I think about the contribution of Delhi, as far as my
Hmm.
personal professional development is concerned, it has been immense. Okay. Again, I don't want to discount the
I
contribution of
agree.
Bihar.
Right.
Again, of course, that's in my foundation.
No, for
But
sure. I get it. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm because
Correct.
I don't want this to be controversial, because it's
No,
nothing can,
absolutely. No, no.
yeah,
It's a what do you say? It's completely personal. It's a
exactly.
personal anecdote and
Yes,
personal experience.
yes,
So that's fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that
Right.
this is the sense, that lack of sense of belonging, because you are leaving that place at such an early age. That's
Right.
something,
Correct.
maybe one of the reasons that, what is the state of Bihar today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's move on like to the later phase of your life, Kumar. So you finished your undergrad and then you cracked the civil
Yeah.
services. So what made you pick up IRS,
Mhm.
and what exactly does an IRS officer do?
Okay.
And what has your journey as an IRS officer been so
Okay.
far?
So, the first question, did I choose the IRS? So the answer is no. So I wanted to
Okay.
become a civil servant. Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
you write the UPSC exam, you write the civil services exam, and then you are given the preference. For example, I have to give my preference. Okay, that my first preference is IES, then IPS, then IFS, then IRS, and there are multiple services. Actually, there are more than 20 services that you can be a part of.
Okay,
Okay.
interesting.
So
Got it. Okay.
the service that you are allocated is based on your rank and performance in the civil services exam. So IRS was my
Got
third
it.
preference. Okay. So my first preference was
Mm-hmm.
IS, the second was IPS, and the third was IRS. So
Mm-hmm.
based on my rank, I got IRS. Now I got my third preference, but
Got
I'm
it.
really
Right.
happy with the job I got, with the profile I got, and I'm really
Right.
liking it. I mean, there are of course some good things, some bad things about all the services, but altogether, I am pretty
Correct.
satisfied with my service. So that was the first question. The second question,
Got it.
what
Right.
does an IRS officer do? So we do a lot many things, but just to tell you a little brief. So in any economy, there are
Mm-hmm.
two major sources of revenue. One is direct tax,
Mm-hmm.
another is indirect tax. Direct tax, for
Correct.
example, corporate tax,
Right.
personal income tax, capital gains tax, okay, where the incidence of tax is actually on the
Mm.
person who is earning something, right? The second is indirect taxes.
Right. Correct.
Indirect taxes like goods and services
Right.
tax, customs duty, excise, etc. So in India, to administer these
Mm.
two types of taxes, there are two administrations, two parallel administrations. One is IRS IT, that
Okay.
is IRS income tax. It
Mm-hmm.
administers direct taxes.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is the
Got
IRS
it.
CNIT, IRS Customs and Indirect Taxes, which administers customs,
Mm-hmm.
and GST, etc. So I'm part of the latter. So I'm part of Indian Revenue Service,
Got it.
Customs and Indirect Taxes. Okay. So what my job
Got
profile
it.
looks
Right.
like. So I'm concerned with revenue collection, revenue augmentation with the help of indirect taxes. Then
Mm.
customs operations, essentially customs duty, anti-smuggling measures, counter narcotics, all these things,
Mm.
and of course policy making,
Interesting.
and of
Right.
course policy making at the ministerial level. So that's like in nutshell the sort of
Correct.
job description that we have. But again, this doesn't paint the
Right.
entire picture of what we do. But in basics,
Absolutely.
that
It's a
covers the
wide thing.
basics. Now coming to the last part of your question,
Right.
that was about my own journey. So when I joined, I
Correct.
started my journey as a pure administrator of GST. So GST was implemented in
Mm-hmm.
2017. I got my first posting in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So that year was very
Wow.
remarkable.
Just
Yeah,
at the time.
it was very
Right.
remarkable because India was just transitioning into this massive tax reform after independence. That was GST, and we
Correct.
were in the middle of
Correct.
that storm. Okay, so it was a very interesting experience. Okay,
Right.
so I started my journey
For sure.
as an administrator. So I was looking after many areas within Gurgaon as far as GST is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I was
Mm-hmm.
posted in Ministry of Finance, where I was involved in policy making. Particularly, I was looking at transition provisions. That what are the implications of India's transition to a new tax regime, and what are its fallouts, and you have
Right.
to sort of control all the things which are happening. So that was my role in the Ministry of Finance. After that, I joined
Mm-hmm.
GSTN. GSTN stands for Goods and Services Tax Network. So GSTN is like the IT
Right.
backbone of entire GST system in India. It's a massive project. It's like
Mm.
one of the most unique projects that the government had. So I really enjoyed my time there.
Correct.
And that was the time when I decided that, okay, I have learned a lot, particularly in the governance domain, in digital development, in ID
Mm-hmm.
development from the government side. And now it is the time to go for a
Right.
master's. Okay, so then I applied for the MPA and
Right.
all. So this has been my short journey of 7 or 8 years after I
Wow.
joined civil services.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds very interesting, but at the same time, I can imagine how difficult it is. With everything you spoke about, it can have like, 100, 200 different caveats to it.
Yes, yeah,
Like, so, it's really, it sounds very interesting.
yeah.
So, when you decided to, head for a master's, what was your idea? Like, did you know you wanted to do it in public administration itself? And like, how did you decide which university you wanted to go to?
Okay, so why did I decide to pursue a master's? So I'm very interested in academia. This
Mm-hmm.
academic milieu in which you are interacting with many people, many professors, and people of high intellect. This always interested me a lot. and all a great fascination and
Right.
admiration for Nobel laureates and all those people. So I always wanted to at
Correct.
least get a taste of what it feels like to be studying from an Ivy League university where you have all those professors of international repute and
Absolutely.
all. Because I personally feel, Harshit, that
Correct.
see, we always tend to think that, okay, if we have a master's degree, then I'll achieve something. I mean, that's sort of a step to something bigger, right?
Hmm.
I personally feel that
Right.
the process of learning itself, having a master's, undergoing that grind itself is a accomplishment.
Correct.
That itself is an accomplishment. Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. I
so
agree.
first
Right.
part was, of course, my learning, and then, um,
Hmm.
of course, my career aspirations, because I wanted to keep my options open. Because see,
Mm-hmm.
the nature of government services, government jobs, everything is undergoing a massive change. We are in the age of technology, AI, blockchain, and whatnot. And unless
Correct.
you kind of
Right.
up the ante and you buckle up and get ready for the next wave of transition, next wave of
Next.
transformations, I mean,
Absolutely.
then you will be lagging. Okay, so I wanted to learn some
Correct.
new skills, learn some new tools. Okay,
Hmm.
and then I also wanted to meet new people, from different nationalities, and I think
Correct.
MPA was the way to go. And now the
Right.
question of why MPA? Because see, I'm a career civil servant. I joined as a civil servant, and most likely I will retire as a civil servant. Okay, so we are
Right.
involved in day-to-day policy making, public affair matters, public administration. So for me, I mean,
Correct.
masters in public administration or public affairs made sense because I wanted to leverage my
Mm-hmm.
experience in the field of public administration. Okay, which I had seven to
Right.
8 years of experience in this field. So I thought combining my
Right.
work experience with the skills and tools which I will learn from an MP degree would kind of 1 plus 1 will become 11. So that was my thinking. There I joined
Absolutely.
MPA. Yeah.
Right. Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. So, Vivek was sorry, Kumar was like Columbia your only option, or did you consider applying to the other Ivies or like other top universities in the world as
Yeah.
well? What was that like?
Yeah, I always want to play safe. Sometimes I overdo it. Okay, and this was the case with my applications
Okay.
also. So I actually applied to
Uh-huh.
11 schools. Okay, and I
Right.
applied to 11 schools, and thankfully, apart from Princeton, I gotten all of them. So I had admits from,
Wow.
of
Okay.
course, Columbia, Harvard, from London School of Economics, from Goldman School of
Right.
Public Policy, UC Berkeley, and then from Duke, Stanford. So
Right.
I mean, I don't even remember all the names now, but yeah, from 10,
I think you
yeah,
mentioned everything that matters. You've
yeah. So I
mentioned. So
I I
yeah.
had zeroed down to this top 10, 11 public policy schools, and I thought that okay, if I get in any,
Right.
if my top three preferences I get there, I will be happy to join. So yeah,
Hmm.
so that's why. And why
Right.
Columbia? Because see, since I had admits from all
Correct.
of
Yeah.
these universities, so my decision ultimately zeroed down to three points. The first is, of course, funding,
Okay.
scholarship. The
Right.
second is the location
Right.
of that university or school, and third is its
Right.
international reputation. So I think SIPA sort of fit the
Got
bill
it.
because located in New York, SIPA gave me a very decent scholarship, a very
Right.
healthy scholarship, and of
Got
course
it.
it's a school of
Right.
international repute. So I think the decision was very easy for me.
Correct.
You know.
Makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense. So, what was your application timeline for like Kumar? Because I've spoken to a lot of engineering and MBA candidates, so I'm assuming I don't know if the MPA would have a similar timeline. Like, what do you submit in your application? Because you have a lot of if people like you are applying, so it's going to be like very very
Yeah.
professional and very people who've achieved really good stuff. So like, what do they ask you in your application? Like, how do you go about that?
So, see, the application process starts in the month of September mostly. In some few cases, you can say
Hmm.
last week of August. So I started my
Right.
my preparation or my this journey, I would say in May. So May I started
Hmm.
to prepare for my GRE.
Hmm.
Okay, and that was the COVID year also.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about 2020. So that was at the
Right.
peak of COVID. So
Got it.
for me, it was work
Right.
from home. So I had plenty of time to actually study for my GRE, my TOEFL, do my essays and all. So I started in May, gave
Correct.
my GRE in TOEFL in August, and from September to December, I
Right.
kept submitting my applications to all the schools. So now the
Makes
application
sense.
process is very similar to, I mean, other schools. Like you have to submit your statement of
Okay.
purpose, your SOPs, your essays, your letter of recommendations,
Hmm.
and for MPA, they ask for GRE and TOEFL. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
I spent those three months on those. By March end,
Got it.
by March end and April first week, I had got all my admits. So that was a brief timeline.
Got it.
And briefly, if I have
Right.
to just tell you that what exactly they look into the applications. First is, of course,
Right.
a good
Right.
GRE score. See, in many public policy schools,
For sure.
people are joining from government and from the public non-profit space. So they might not be
Correct.
very inclined to appear for GRE because these guys are coming from. And I had
Hmm.
friends in SIPA who had like 15 years of experience. So they
Right.
don't want to insult themselves by
Right.
writing the GRE again. So,
Correct.
so
Correct. For
yeah.
sure.
So
Yeah.
many schools actually exempt, the candidates from writing GRE. But I personally feel that you must
Mm-hmm.
write GRE. See, it's for a couple of
Mm-hmm.
purposes. The first is, of course, GRE. A good GRE score looks good on an application. Okay, and your chances
Absolutely.
of
Right.
getting a good funding, a good scholarship, it increases. I'm telling you. Okay, an
Interesting. Okay.
application having
Okay.
like a 320, 325 on his GRE, and an application without a GRE score,
Right.
the chances of the first guy getting a good, better funding is more. That's the first. And the second
Absolutely.
thing is,
Got it. Makes
and the
sense. Okay.
second thing is, Harshit, that MPA courses, some of the courses are very quant intensive. For example, if you're talking about something like
Hmm.
quantitative analysis for international affairs or macroeconomic theory, microeconomic theory, international capital markets, these are very quant heavy
Right. Right.
subjects. And if you really want to have a kickstart, I think GRE is a good place because, see, while you are preparing, you are actually not only preparing for GRE, you are also preparing for 2 years of classes. So it helps.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
if someone is out of
Right.
touch with his quant and with his vocab, I think it gives you a very good platform
It's
for
a
you.
good
Yeah.
way to.
So these two things are, the basic premise for my suggestion of writing the GRE. The second, of course, is TOEFL. TOEFL. I mean,
Right.
any Indian student who has had his basic education in English or undergrad in English won't find a problem with TOEFL. But if someone is not having that background,
Absolutely.
I would suggest that at least start your preparation at least for 2 months before you're writing the TOEFL. 2 months is something that you require to actually score good on TOEFL. Now, coming to the statement of purpose and all, so since I had applied to 11
Hmm.
schools, so I had more than 25 essays to write.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
imagine. Right.
with different word limits
So.
and different topics. So, but
Hmm.
then, Harshit,
Correct.
I personally felt that this process of writing your essays is a very, enlightening process. You get to know a lot about yourself.
Right.
you know and that's
Correct.
why now you have all these AI tools like ChatGPT and all, and I know it would be very tempting to you know sort of outsource your
Use
essay
them and
writing to ChatGPT. But
correct.
I mean, this is
Right.
the most important suggestion that I want to give through this podcast, through this interview, is that don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anyone who wants to have a master's,
Right.
it's okay that if you want to fine tune your essays, but don't outsource it completely. You know, Writing your
Right.
essays, your SOP is a wonderful opportunity to know yourself, to know your strengths, to know your weaknesses. Invest some time on that. Okay. The LORs, of
Right.
course, it makes sense if you have LORs, academic as well as professional LORs. Okay. So what happens if
Hmm.
you are working for more than 10 years and you want to do an MPA? And obviously you won't be
Correct.
knowing your undergrad teachers, professors. And in
Absolutely.
India, we
Absolutely.
also think that we don't really have good relations with our undergrad professors. Most of them hate us, and we
Correct.
all.
Correct. Right.
So, but
The
the LORs, yeah.
LORs.
So it's always good if you have
Right.
one academic LOR at least, because admissions committee,
Got it.
see, all these nitty-gritty, the small things matter when it comes to your funding. You might get an admit,
Right.
but then to get the scholarship, see, scholarship,
That's when they look at.
yes. I mean, getting an admit and getting a scholarship, what is the difference? Getting an admit is something
Hmm.
like, the school feels that, okay, you will fit in my school. Now, when you are getting a funding, a
Right.
healthy funding, it means that school wants you with them. Okay, so
Right. I think
yeah,
this is a very good thing. Like, I haven't, no one's ever spoken about this on the
yes,
podcast, and like this is a very good way to put it. Like, I think the best way to
right,
put
yeah.
it. Thank you. Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
yeah,
Carry on.
Harshit. I
Okay.
mean, so that's why it's important that you take care of these small things, these small nuances.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct. That makes sense. So what was so in addition to the SO, the statement of purpose,
Mhm.
right? So what kind of essays were they asking? Were they like related to public administration, like going further, or was it like asking you like personal questions about your life and
Yeah.
about things like that? What was that like?
Yeah, so that depends, like which school you're applying to. For example, SIPA
Hmm.
had, I think, 4 or 5 essays. Harvard had like 3 or 4
Wow.
essays.
Okay.
Some of them had only one. For example, I
Hmm.
remember Goldman had only one, or maybe two.
Right.
So it depends. So all these, particularly these Ivy League schools, they're like more into throwing as many essays as the topics as possible.
Morning.
So,
Correct.
but
Correct.
that's also a
For
good thing
sure.
because they sort of differentiate your personal from your professional. Okay, so one essay will
Mm.
be completely dedicated to your motivation for doing this MPA. So that gives you a
Hmm.
very good opportunity to actually show them in one essay that how exactly you have invested yourself, your time into understanding or sort of researching about that particular school or that particular program. The second would be tell us about your
Right.
achievements, that some of the incidents that made you learn something, that you made a contribution. So that's some sort of, it might be on
Right.
the personal front or the professional front. Okay. So I personally feel that if the
Got it.
essays are actually segregated like this, like the way Harvard
Mm.
does or Princeton or Columbia does, it's actually good for the candidates. Okay.
Mm.
So the question that what sort of essays?
Right.
So one is of course your motivation to join that particular course or that degree program. The second is tell me something
Right.
personal that changed your life or that sort of had a transformative impact on your journey and everything. Okay. So yeah,
Right.
these
Right.
are the basic ones. You see, the template would always be very similar. What will happen that one university will
For
ask you
sure.
to write everything in 2,000 words in one essay. Some of them will tell you that, okay, you
Right.
have
Correct.
500 word essay, but 5 essays,
Separately.
do it separately. Okay, so that's it. Yeah.
Right. Correct. I think one thing I wanted to mention before also, like, the way you explain the SOP and why it's important, I think that was a very, very good way. And like, I actually feel the same way, right? So a lot of students, we follow a fixed structure saying, first paragraph should be this, second paragraph should be this, third paragraph should be this. But it's always difficult for people to figure out what to fill in those
Yeah.
paragraphs. And for me, especially, the SOP was a very introspective
Yes.
journey. Like I initially did not do it that
Yeah.
way, right? So I was like randomly writing down my projects and like, trying to do stuff like
Yeah.
that. But once you start, trying to like focus on it and think about it, you start giving a kind of a story to your own
Yeah.
life. Like I did this brought me
Of course.
here,
Yeah.
and therefore I'm heading there.
Absolutely.
So when you look at the bigger picture, you actually understand why the SOP is actually there. So that was, I just want to share that as well. Uh, Kumar, what was the course structure at MPA like? I think that's a 2-year course,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like, how many courses do you have? Do you have
Yeah,
specializations?
yeah.
What
So
is
it's
that like?
again, yeah. So you're right. MPA is a 2-year course. Although a couple of courses were
Mm-hmm.
1-year courses as well. But I won't talk about them because I
Mm-hmm.
don't actually know much about them. But mine was 2-year course, MPA,
Sure, no
Masters in
problem.
Public Administration. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
we had specializations. So in the MPA curriculum, particularly in SIPA, you first have to
Mm-hmm.
select a concentration. Now, this concentration, it might be in the
Mm-hmm.
field of, say, international finance and economic policy or economic and political development, etc. And then once you have that
Mm-hmm.
concentration, then you have to choose a focus area. For example, my concentration was
Okay.
international finance and economic policy with a focus on economic policy.
Okay.
So once you have your concentration and
Okay.
focus area, then the second thing that you need to opt is a specialization. Now, specializations are also many. For
Mm-hmm.
example, in SIPA, we had technology, media, and communication, data and quantitative analytics, human rights, and so on. Okay, so mine
Mm-hmm.
was, for example, data and quantitative analytics with a focus on quantitative analytics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's like the course structure.
Wow.
Okay,
Okay.
then of course you have some core courses,
Got it.
some electives. Okay, and
Right.
that's like the entire credit
Right.
structure that you have to have these 8 or 9
Mm.
core courses. The core courses would be like
Right.
statistics, which we call microeconometrics, like quantitative analysis. Then you will have economy courses, very important economy courses like macroeconomics, microeconomics. Okay,
Mm.
and then some management courses. These are also
Right.
core courses like management of government services or management of non-profit, profit
Mm.
companies. Okay, so these are some of the core
Right.
courses that you have to take. Then comes the electives, that is from your concentration. For example, if you are your concentration is international finance and economic policy, then there are some courses that you have to do. For example, international trade, international capital markets, international monetary theory. Okay, so these are the courses that you have to take. Okay, so this is the course structure, and the sort of options, the menu, the spread of courses in these universities, particularly Harvard,
Is
Columbia, and
right.
Princeton, is mind-boggling. I mean, you would be confused, you would be overwhelmed
Absolutely.
what to do, what not to. So,
Right.
I mean, many people ask this question that what did you see in that particular school that you thought, okay, this is my school, or did the course
Right.
curriculum suited your aspirations or your career goals? What I think personally, Harshit, that
Correct.
once you have zeroed down to say 5 or 6 schools, okay, that these are the schools that I will be
Mm-hmm.
applying to, and of course that will be on the basis of all
Mm-hmm.
the research that will be doing about the course, the curriculum, etc. Once you
Correct.
have those 5 or 6 schools, then don't worry about the curriculum and the course, because the menu, the spread is so
Right.
so
Wide
wide
and
that you will
correct.
definitely get a course of your choice. But again, I must qualify
Right.
that I'm telling this about MPA. I'm not sure about, say, engineering or
For sure.
MBA or
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Then there can be
Right,
some
right.
courses which are very niche or very very focused. Okay,
Correct.
of course, then you'll have to go to
Right.
some specific schools. But once you have those 5 6 schools in your mind,
Correct.
it's don't worry about it.
Makes sense. I mean, that's a good way to look at
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah,
Even I think for majority of the engineering courses as well, like course structure should be like a higher level hierarchy. Once you go down, it is more or less the same in all the good schools.
absolutely.
So I think that makes
And
sense.
just to make one more point,
So,
Harshit, that
mhm,
I saw in SIPA, people came with a
mhm,
preconceived notion or with a pre-decided mind that,
mhm.
okay, in SIPA, I am going to opt for economic and political development. That will be my concentration. In the
Okay.
next semester, they changed to
Right.
international finance and economic policy. In the third, they changed to something else. I mean, I
Right.
myself, my concentration in the first semester was economic and political
Right.
development, and then I realized, no, this is not going to work
Okay.
for me. I have to opt something else. I chose international finance and economic policy. Okay,
Right.
so make a broad-based decision. Don't think that, okay, you have to go there and do that particular course only, because things will change
Right.
exponentially, it will change dramatically once you have entered the school. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, in addition to that, like once you go there and like you talk to people, you see the courses, you see what course others are taking, automatically you kind of start figuring out whether you're on the right track or you want to do something else.
Yeah.
So I think, and universities are quite flexible with
Oh,
allowing you
yes,
to
yes, they are.
changing your focus area, your concentration.
Yes, yes, they are.
So that's another good thing as
Yes,
well,
yes, of course, yeah. Yeah.
right? Uh, so, Kumar, how many courses do you have in a semester? So I'm assuming you have 4 semesters.
4 semesters,
So do you
yeah.
have like four? Like in engineering, we usually have
Yeah,
four courses per semester. What was
yeah.
that like for you?
So, if I recall correctly, I think we're supposed to have at least 55 credits in 4 semesters. Okay. So
Got it.
55 credits is
Hmm.
like, so each semester on an average, people used to take around 12 to 15 credits. So one subject is 3 credits usually. There are some shorter courses also, like
Correct.
1.5 and maybe 1 credit also. Okay, so that's the usual course load.
Right.
So you'll be in any particular semester,
Hmm.
you will be having 4 to 5 subjects. So that's like the usual course load.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I think this is much heavier than for us at engineering. At engineering, I think for like at least we have 30 credits in 1.5 year.
Okay.
So we take a split of like 4, 4, 2 for international students, like 4 course
Yeah.
first, 4 course second, third course. The third semester is just 2 courses.
Yeah.
But I can imagine yours is much, much heavier.
Uh,
So, right,
uh,
it's
I don't know
you.
how to compare,
Yeah,
but
sorry.
then many people, when they enter SIPA and they start doing their courses, then they realize that yes, actually it's
Right.
because see, once you say masters in public administration, you think that okay, people will just talk there about public administration, government, human rights and all.
Right.
But SIPA's and Harvard's these MPA courses, these are very quantitative. Some of the courses are like people cry
Right.
doing their assignments, and there are many
Right,
many
for
many
sure.
coding courses. I mean,
Wow.
then there are many software that you have to use. For example, I learned R, I learned Stata. Okay, when I was there,
Mm.
many people learn like visualization tools like Tableau and all. Okay, and these are like non-technical people,
Correct.
and then you are telling
Right.
them that okay, you have to sit in front of a computer and do programming in Python.
Correct.
Yeah, so
It's not
yeah,
their cup of tea.
this is very difficult.
Right.
It's very difficult. So some people do struggle. But then
Correct.
these universities, these schools have a very good support system, so they sail through.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct. So I'm actually doing this course at SIPA. It's called Data-Driven Approaches for Campaigning and
Yes, yes,
Advocacy.
yes, yeah. That's a good
So
course, yeah.
right. So there, I think people are supposed to use R. And for me, coming from a programming
Yeah,
background, it's not too
yeah,
hard. But for all the others, they're using a few of them are coding for the first time in their
yeah.
life. So they were like, it's interesting to see. And I think one very interesting, like, good thing about, all these large language models and ChatGPT
Hmm.
is if you can understand the basic structure of code,
Yeah,
like you can use these to, generate like, bigger things when you move into, your work and things like
right,
that. So I
absolutely.
think it enables them to like it enables you people to like make better decisions.
Absolutely. I
So that's
completely agree.
really
I
nice.
completely agree. In fact, two
Right.
things. First of all, of course, I mean, having engineering background, I mean, if you are doing this particular course, I'm pretty sure that groups will be competing to have you in their assignments group. You know, and
Right, right,
second
for
thing, you
sure.
you you
Yeah.
said a very it's very insightful. It's a very nuanced thing that you said. You know, for example,
Right.
I'm a civil servant. Okay, although I do have an engineering degree,
Hmm.
but I don't consider myself an engineer.
Mhm.
Okay, because calling myself an engineer would be an insult to
Okay.
the real engineers in the world like you. Okay, so
Right.
I'm an
So that
engineering
would be
graduate, but not
interesting.
an
Yeah.
engineer. Okay, so having a non-technical
Right.
background, if you have some policy questions in your mind and you want to have some data-driven insights,
Hmm.
then these AI tools
Correct.
are very helpful. It's sort of it's
Absolutely.
like you have an entire body, but you don't have your limbs because that limb is data, and data analysis. But with
Correct.
that chat
Correct.
GPT and all, I don't have a limb, but at least I have a prosthetic that I can use somehow to get something.
Absolutely.
So
That's
yeah, so that
a very good
yeah,
analogy.
so
Right. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
it has helped me a lot. For example, I use ChatGPT for data analysis and just doing some
Right.
sort of basic stuff, and I don't have to rely on some data
Absolutely.
engineers or data scientists for that. So that has been the biggest help. Yeah,
Exactly. Correct. I think, when you want to take an immediate decision, you have the data in front of
yeah,
you. Instead of, calling up someone, waiting for an hour,
exactly.
2 hours,
Yeah,
you can literally just pull it up, make the changes, and see it
of
yourself.
course.
So
Yeah,
that's really
yes,
powerful.
yeah.
Great. So moving into an MPA class, Kumar. So what was the class like? How many students were there? And you were mentioning that you saw some of the 15 years of public administration
Um,
experience coming in as well. So what was the diversity like because SIPA in general is a very very diverse a school. So what was
yeah.
that like for you?
I mean, see, first let me talk about the class size and all. So the core courses, for example,
Right.
economics courses, the statistics courses, you will have somewhere around ballpark like 60 to 70, in each class, 60 to 70.
Hmm.
Then the
Right.
concentration, the elective classes, you will have around 40, 20 to 40. It can be 20, it can be 40, somewhere in that
Hmm.
range. For the
Hmm.
specialization classes, you'll have around 15 to 25. So that's like the range of classroom
Right.
sizes that we'll have. Okay, some classrooms are like
Hmm.
very, very, lecture based. When the professor comes and writes on the board and you have to just, listen to him, ask questions, that sort of a class. Some classes are very,
Right.
very workshop like, in which there will be constant interaction and then you
Hmm.
sort of come to a conclusion and then you sort of evolve the discussion to something concrete and you get out of the class with some message. Some of the classes would be
Right.
project based. For example, the capstone project that we do. That's a wonderful thing. For
Hmm.
example, in my second year, I did the capstone project, which was a World Bank project which we did in Cambodia. Okay, so I visited Cambodia
Wow. Okay.
and did my research there, and my project was how to make changes in the supply chain of Cambodia's rice sector to improve the export of rice, to increase its rice export competitiveness. Okay, so that sort of interesting things are
Right.
also there,
Right. For sure.
and the classes
Right.
are like, I mean, again, I'm diverting from the topic a bit, but some of the classes are so interesting. I, since you're doing a
Hmm.
podcast, I did a podcast class, fundamentals of podcast. Okay, so it's a
Oh wow.
yeah,
Okay. No, I did not know that. Now this is
it's a half
interesting. Right.
semester class. Okay, it
Okay.
was a wonderful experience. I did my own little podcast and sort of released it, so it was wonderful. Okay,
Wow.
so yeah, in that class, for example, since
Right.
that's a specialization class in technology, media, and communication, it was 12 or 13 students in the
Right.
class. Okay, so again, a very discussion and
Hmm.
project based class. Now the diversity, oh my
Correct.
God, this is the best thing about SIPA or any public policy school.
Right.
The kind of people and the background, oh my God. So I would tell you that, okay, in my international trade class, I had a diplomat from UAE, who had like 10 years of experience. In my international finance and capital
Right.
markets class, I had a Mexican friend who was working in Mexico's IT
Mm-hmm.
sector as an IT consultant. He is taking
Right.
international finance class with me.
Uh-huh.
Then there are Chinese people, then Eurasian people who are working in the government, people
Right.
from Africa, people from
Right.
different parts of the world. I mean, the sort of things which I learned from them, the perspectives which I got, oh my God, it's like that what I would say that has been my biggest takeaway from SIPA. You know, so very diverse people,
For sure.
different
For sure.
experiences. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, for someone applying for an MPA, Kumar, would you recommend having a good amount of work experience? Because I think you went with around 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 years of experience. So, would you recommend someone going with like 2 to 3 years, 1 or 2 years? Have
I
you
would
seen
say, yeah.
students
I
like that
mean,
as well in the program?
going straight after your undergrad, that's not suggested. Okay, there might be
Got it.
extreme cases, exceptional cases in which they allow that, but
Right.
no. I
Right.
mean, at least have at least 2 years of experience, then go for the MPA.
Right.
Because see, there
Got
is
it.
reason for that, and the reason being, see, most of these classes are discussion based. Okay, and you are required to contribute to that discussion, to the conversation. If you don't have any experience, any
Right.
work experience, what exactly you are going to contribute? You will feel out of place. Most of the
For
times when we
sure.
are having this conversation,
Correct.
I would raise my hand, okay, with my experience in Indian Revenue Service, okay, I
Experience.
want to put in a new
Correct.
perspective. But if you are a newcomer having no work experience,
Right.
then it becomes a little, I won't say
It's
difficult,
very
but then
hard.
yeah, it's like, it's okay. But you could have done better had
Right. I
gone
mean,
with a 2 years experience. Yeah.
sure. I think it'll be difficult to contribute, and I think you can't even relate very easily, right?
Yes,
When
yeah,
someone say you're talking from India, so maybe someone from some South Asian country, or
yeah,
someone from Asia would say, we have a very similar problem. So
yeah,
that kind of probably makes sense
absolutely. Yep, yep,
for
yep,
sure.
yeah.
So right, right. Kumar, what you learned at Columbia, how do you think since you graduated about a year, like almost a year ago,
Yes.
so how have you been using this in your day-to-day life, like as an IRS officer? What is that like?
See, there are a couple of things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
as civil servants, we are dealing with policy on a day-to-day basis. Okay. Either we are making policy
Correct.
or contributing in the process of policy making, or we are implementing the policy. Okay. So when I was in the Ministry of Finance,
Right. Correct.
I was involved in policy formulation. Okay. But when I was in the
Mm-hmm.
field, for example, today I'm working in the field. I am working in a customs formation. So I am implementing the policies which have been made by the government. So on a day-to-day basis, I am implementing policies. Okay.
Right.
So when you are making policies, the skills that you'll have learned in SIPA, for example, your skill to create insights from data, that is something which is very handy. I'm telling this in the Indian context because in India, the things, of course, again, is changing rapidly. Okay, and in fact, there are many public policy schools opening in
Right.
India also. But traditionally in India,
Correct.
policy has mostly been intuition driven. Okay, that you feel intuitive about something, you have an intuition, and then you sort of create a
It
policy.
makes sense,
Okay,
right?
it's very consensus driven also that, okay,
Correct.
on the basis of the collective wisdom of the bureaucracy or the collective wisdom of politicians, okay, you go on to make a policy, and
Right.
then
Right.
later
Right.
you realize that, okay, it actually backfired or did not perform to the extent that what desired, right? So,
You would
yeah,
have
so
wanted. Correct.
if your policy is rooted in data driven evidence or data or evidence, then it becomes very effective. Okay, so the first is the skills, the skill set of applying data, or applying evidence into policy making. So that's the first. The second is, the tools. For example, there are many tools which we learn. Like I learned Stata, I learned R. I also learned tools like impact measurement, impact evaluation. Okay, so all the policy have sort of a life cycle. Okay, it's not only about we have implemented the policy and the job is done. Okay, throughout the life cycle, you
Right.
have to measure that, okay, what has been its impact, who are the stakeholders which are getting impacted by this, and all sort of things. For that, you need some
Right.
statistics, everything. Okay.
Correct.
So the
Correct.
tools that you learn there, for example, even I
Right.
would
Right.
say, making a podcast is also a tool, right? If you want to propagate some
Right.
message.
For sure.
So the tools that you learn there,
Correct.
okay. In fact, you realize after doing a master's from SIPA that, okay, there are many tools available to help you. Even that realization is very important.
Correct.
For example, I am now
Absolutely.
I am not
Absolutely.
at a middle level of civil services. Okay, I won't be
Right.
doing the sort of dirty work of doing my data crunching at my own. But if I know that, okay, some
Correct.
sort of
Correct.
a tool is available that can solve this problem, I can always
Right.
have those resources, maybe work for me or work under me, right? So that is the second thing.
Correct. Correct.
And third,
Absolutely.
and the
Right.
third and the last one is the horizon. You start taking
Mhm.
into account so many things that are beyond your job description. Okay, for example, if
Right.
right now I am implementing customs policy or trade policy and doing trade facilitation, if I didn't have like a SIPA degree or
Mhm.
didn't have this pedagogy which I am carrying with me, then I would be very
Mhm.
what you say, narrow in my vision, narrow in my implementation. Okay,
Mhm.
so but
Right.
having taken the class on say microeconomics or international trade or the broader picture, it broadens your horizon. So if I have to summarize all of this into a
Right.
nutshell, I would say that a SIPA degree on a day-to-day basis, I'm talking about a SIPA degree or the skills that you learn in SIPA
Right.
helps you see the macro picture when you are implementing something at the micro level, and it helps you
Right.
anticipate the micro implications when you are doing something at the macro level when
Of a
you are making
macro.
policy. Okay, so that's
Absolute.
sort of the summary of how
Right.
it is helping me or any other bureaucrat who might have done a MPA on a day-to-day basis. Yeah,
Absolutely. I think that's a very, very good way to look at it,
yeah,
right? So it's very difficult to measure the direct impact it will have, but your day-to-day thing itself, like on or like when you're implementing something or
yeah.
whatever, like you get a different perspective and you can look at what you can possibly do otherwise also. Like
Yes,
it opens up a lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
options.
yeah,
So that makes sense.
yes.
Kumar, what's your favorite thing about Columbia? Your favorite thing about New York? So in your experience.
See, of course, people. I would the first thing that I would put is people. The sort of people I met.
Uh-huh.
I mean, amazing
Right.
people, people from different backgrounds, people from different professions, people from different countries. You know, today, what happened?
Right.
So I was free after my last semester. So May I graduated and I was coming
Hmm.
back on June. So I had like almost
Okay.
1 month of free time. So what
Okay.
I did, that I made like an
Hmm.
Excel sheet of all those people that I'm friends with and their nationality. Okay,
Okay.
so later I
Uh-huh.
came to realize that okay, I have friends with 45 different nationalities. Okay, so I mean,
Wow.
can
Right.
you
Right.
put like a monetary value to this value add that you have? It's
Absolutely.
it's
There
it's
is there is no
it's
way,
impossible, right?
right?
So a very good friend of mine
Correct.
in
Correct.
SIPA. So he was. I'm just telling you some of
Hmm.
the experience just on a lighter note. So
Sure, sure. Yeah, 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 yeah.
he became my friend in the first semester, and then in second semester he invited me to Mexico. So we planned that okay, we'll go to Mexico. So I did like a
Okay.
Latin American trip. We went to
Right.
Peru, Colombia, all those places. And while coming back, I stayed
Uh-huh.
with him in Mexico. So in Mexico, there's a small place
Okay.
on the outside Mexico City. It's called Cuernavaca. Okay, beautiful place. Amazing
Okay.
cuisine, amazing culture, amazing people. Everything was so nice. I met his
Right.
grandparents and his family. It was so wonderful. And
Okay.
that
Nice.
guy,
Right.
happens to be his uncle used to be the president of Mexico. So
Wow.
this is the kind of
Right.
experience that you'll have. You'll know people from all sorts of background, and then you realize that okay, this is the kind of social capital that we have been able to build in these 2 beautiful years. And of course,
Absolutely.
the second, of course, is New York City.
Correct.
I mean, it's such a beautiful city. It's a
Right.
you know it might appear very dirty, from the outside, but
For sure.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
see the inner beauty of New York if I want to use it in a very cringe way. But
Absolutely.
that, yeah, I was fascinated by the inner beauty of New York. After you have spent a couple of
For sure.
months,
Yeah.
then you
Yeah.
realize that okay, this what this city has to offer. So I went to many parties. I went to many,
Correct.
cruise nights, and I had all those social gatherings and all
Right.
those, socials. Yeah,
Right.
so that was very
Right.
wonderful. And
Right.
and of course,
For sure.
I mean, apart from all the experiences that I had, I think the opportunity to travel, because I would have never imagined that I would be traveling to Peru from India or Costa Rica or Panama. But because I was so close to Latin America, I traveled to five
Right.
countries, during my winter break and during my
Correct.
summer break. So yeah, I mean, people, the
Right. For
network,
sure.
the
For
skills,
sure.
overall a good package, everything. Not,
Absolutely.
I could have asked for nothing better, This is like the best 2 years of my life, I would say. Yeah.
Right. I can imagine, right? From what I'm hearing, it sounds like you had a blast and you learned a
Yeah.
lot. So, what more could you
Okay,
ask for?
Archie, just one point,
Right.
because see, my case was also because see,
Sure,
I
sure.
don't want to create a false impression. See, I didn't have
For sure.
I didn't have any obligation to look for a job because I had a job. The government was paying for
Hmm.
my I did not fund my education, but it was giving me salary on a monthly basis. So I was getting my Indian salary because I was study leave.
Got it.
I also had like a
Right.
teaching assistantship
Okay.
in across 4 semesters. So I did not
Okay.
earn anything. I did not build like a like a portfolio there, but I was break even. Okay, so
Right.
this
Right.
sort of financial independence,
Right. For
and
sure.
second, this no stress of hunting for a job. So these things contributed a lot in my
Hmm.
experience. So I don't want to create this false impression that it's all happy and everything. People did get a lot
Absolutely.
of stress and
Absolutely.
all. Yeah,
Right. And thank you for the disclaimer. I think a lot of people should, like you
yeah,
said, right? They should not be under the false impression that you can do all of this and still,
yeah,
end up with a
yeah,
job.
yeah.
So it's always good to know.
And
So,
sure,
this
sure.
was this is sorry.
No, no.
Yeah.
One last point that apart from all this fun and all the good things that I had, I did work hard. I mean, I did study hard. I
Right.
had I had a decent GPA around 3.7. Okay, so I had I mean, at least
Right.
I was happy that I was able to make my professors happy and no one complained. So I also worked hard. So it's not like not only
Absolutely.
one part of
Absolutely.
the story. Yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. Correct.
yeah.
Correct.
Sure. Go ahead.
Agreed. Makes sense. So, that's a good segue to the next question, Kumar. So, what is the fee structure at SIPA like, and like how did you find it?
See, that's prohibitively high. It's very high. I mean, when I was there, I think it
Right.
was
Uh-huh.
around 110,000 or 115,000 for 2 years. Okay. And then, I
Okay.
mean, it's very high. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absurd. I mean, this much of,
Right. For
particularly
sure.
for an Indian in dollar terms, like, is very huge.
Correct.
But
Sure.
then,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Correct.
luckily, I got like a very decent scholarship. Columbia scholarship covered
Mm-hmm.
more than 85% of my tuition. Then I was getting my
Wow.
Indian
Okay.
government salary. That of course is not too much if from the New York standard. At least it was something. So I was being
Correct.
supported by that. And then
Right.
the third thing, the most important thing for me, that I got teaching assistantship in 4 semesters. So in 4 semesters, I
Right.
was teaching
Right. So
assistant to um, in mostly professors of international trade because that's my field and I liked that. Okay,
right.
so all of this
Correct.
made sure that I was comfortable. But many of my
Right.
friends who didn't have this much of scholarship, they also did TA ships or they took
Right.
loans. And I mean, there are sources of
Right.
funding available. Okay, just to keep
Right.
looking at it, like Fulbright is there. I didn't realize when I was applying that for
Correct.
to be considered for Fulbright, you actually have to apply for Fulbright first and then
Fill
your
in
score. So I
the.
thought, this came to me. So
Okay.
I would suggest
Right.
that people who are looking for funding opportunities should not make this mistake. Before you are starting your
Right.
journey, make sure that you know all the funding avenues available to you and the last dates and whether they are pre-application
Hmm.
or post-application. So you are not taken by surprise as I was.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Got it. For sure. I think that's a
yeah,
that's a good point. I was going to ask you about scholarship. I think you did a good job covering that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
is there anything particular you want to share with UPSC aspirants or MPA aspirants more specifically? Something we haven't covered. We've covered, I think, a broad variety of topics and specifics. But is there something you still think you want to convey as like a final message to all those watching?
Well, I think as far as UPSC aspirants are concerned, it's there's no doubt that this entire journey is difficult. I mean, when
For
I say
sure.
difficult, see, the process of studying, say, economics or political science, sociology, international relations, this process will be very enjoyable. Okay, so don't think that you are
Hmm.
just grinding yourself along the process. No, you are learning a lot. Okay, and it will broaden your perspective. You will be a
Correct.
better person after you come out of that preparation phase, irrespective of the fact whether you qualify or not.
Right.
Okay, so the first thing I would say,
Right.
I would suggest people who are preparing for civil services that one, enjoy the process, enjoy that learning that is happening. Second,
Hmm.
make a hard stop that okay, these many attempts and this is the age
Hmm.
till when I am going to prepare for civil services. Okay, what happens? The
Right.
structure of the exam, I told you, it's a vicious loop, and the maximum age limit is
Correct.
32. In some categories, in 35 in some categories, and 40 in some categories. Okay, so you don't waste
Wow.
your
Okay.
prime youth in just preparing for one exam. Okay, one attempt, two attempt, that's it.
Right.
You know, don't go beyond that. There is a possibility that you might qualify
Right.
after say 5 attempts. That's okay. But don't invest
Hmm.
6 or 7 years of your life. Okay, because there's so much to it after.
Makes sense.
Because
Makes sense.
take my example. After qualifying for civil services, after being an IRS officer, I opted for MPA, right? Okay, some people
Hmm.
don't get it.
Correct.
Like, why? I mean, why are
Correct.
you studying more? So it's like, it's not the end of the journey.
Right.
Okay, enjoy the process, but then have a hard stop. That
Absolutely.
okay, 26 after that, or 27 after that, I'm not going to continue with this. There's so many better things to do. The second, as far as the
For sure.
candidates are concerned, the message is very simple. When you are in SIPA or Harvard or Princeton or whichever public policy schools you are going to, keep one thing in mind: the
Hmm.
time flies. 2 years, you won't realize, it will just go away. So don't
Right.
leave anything to your imagination that, okay, this is
Right.
something that I have to do. I will be making my network. Your to-do list, you have to start working on from day one. Okay. I'm not trying to, overwhelm you guys or,
Right.
anything, very heavy. But
For
then
sure.
enjoy your life, enjoy, your network, enjoy your friends there, go out, don't, confine yourself in the library all the time, you know, that's important because learning
Right.
not only comes from your classes, I would
Correct.
say more than 50% of my learning came from my interaction with my friends there, you know, so have a balance.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. So I think, Kumar, I have just one last question
sure.
before we wrap
Yeah,
up this
go
episode.
ahead.
So as an IRS officer, what is one change that you've brought about that you're very proud of, and like how do you see yourself, moving the career? That's two
Okay.
questions. So yeah, two.
Yeah, to answer your first question, one thing, I mean, I'm a big fan of this book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Okay, it
Right.
says that
Correct. Yeah.
I
For sure.
mean, if you are developing a habit, incremental change,
Hmm.
if you implement that through a long course of time, through a long period of time, it gives you exponential results after some time, right? So if you ask me that,
Correct.
tell me one big bang change that I brought about, I can't recall any. But I always invest
Hmm.
myself or my efforts in building those tiny frameworks, those tiny changes wherever I can. Okay.
Interesting.
So that is something which I have seen throughout my career, that wherever I have invested myself in building those
Hmm.
frameworks and making those tiny changes, introducing those small,
Right.
transformations in the system, in the design, etc. They have, on the long run, they have given me dividend,
Hmm.
and they have given the, governance a dividend. That's the first thing. But
Correct.
having said that,
Makes sense.
one thing which I am particularly, I won't say proud of, I mean, that sounds a little,
Hmm.
arrogant, but then I'm very happy about is
Right.
I have been able to change, at least in my, acquaintance, I have been able to change the perception about civil
Hmm.
services, because when I used to have those,
Wow.
meetups before actually going
Hmm.
to SIPA, people used to think that, okay, this guy is from the Indian
Right.
Revenue Service, he must be very arrogant, he must be very high-headed, he must be, this is
Oh.
typical
Okay.
Babu image that they used to have. But once they met me,
Right.
and then
For
we had our
sure.
interactions, we spent time for a couple of years, then most of them tell me that I don't
Right.
look, behave, or sort of give that manifestation of the typical Sarkari Babu. So that's
I can 100% attest to that
okay.
because I just dropped you a text on LinkedIn and you were like, let's just do
Yeah,
it. So I
yeah.
can completely understand where you're coming from.
And see,
Right.
this is not only me. I think there are many like me. See, like
Mm,
bureaucracy, civil services in India, it has undergone a massive change. Of course, we have our own issues and our own problems and things.
correct.
But then, despite
For
all
sure.
the ills, I think there are many like me who are like doing a wonderful job, who are very approachable, who are very
Right.
tech savvy, who like to learn, who like to implement new things. So this is one thing which I am
Mm,
particularly happy about. And throughout my life, I would
right.
keep convincing people, that okay, there's more to Sarkari Babu than you have the perception of. And to the next question that
For
I
sure.
want to see myself in the future. Look, I
Right.
don't have many long-term goals as such. Okay, I
Okay.
take life like, I would say, maybe 1 year at a time. Okay, I know that, okay, what I'll be doing for the
Okay.
next 1 year. So, but then
For
yeah,
sure.
but
Right.
then maybe if at all I have to answer this question, in the long run, I see myself, maybe teaching. That is something which I always wanted to. I
Interesting.
always, because in SIPA
Okay.
also, many of my students,
Mm-hmm.
who I was teaching. in my capacity as a teaching assistant.
Right.
When I read their
Right.
feedback about the class, I was like, in a couple of cases, I
Correct.
was literally in tears because I didn't know that, oh my God, this is the kind of impact I could be making for someone, just by making them learn or just
Wow.
helping them along the process. Okay. So this is something
Right.
which I'm truly passionate about. I really want to teach. So maybe
Mm.
10 years down the line, you and me will be having a conversation in some public policy school or someplace else.
For sure, for sure. That sounds very interesting. I think thank you so much for your time, Kumar. I mean,
No, it was a
I
pleasure
scheduled
talking
this
to
as
you.
a
Yeah,
35, 40 minutes thing, but I like looking at how interesting and listening to the whole thing and like
yeah.
listening from you, it was amazing. I couldn't stop it.
No, no, no.
So thank you so much for
Harshit,
your
I think
time, Kumar. This was
what you're
yeah,
doing
sorry.
is a wonderful thing. See, when I was preparing for my MPA journey, I mean,
Thank you.
I was also looking at, some sort of advice, some sort of guidance from the internet, from YouTube and all.
Right.
I think what you're doing is a very good thing. It
Correct.
will help many candidates, coming from
Thank
different
you.
backgrounds and all. Okay, so keep doing that, and along the
Right.
way,
For sure.
we're all together in this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Kumar. I mean, even the goal of this podcast was the exact same
Yeah.
thing, right? Instead of having to reach out to someone individually and ask them
Yeah.
questions, if the general questions are all in one place, you can just watch it and, get all the knowledge
Absolutely.
too.
Yeah. Sure.
So,
Sure.
yeah,
Thank you. Thank you
thank you
so
so
much.
much,
Thank
Kumar.
you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this episode. This brings us towards the end of the episode. If you like it, please do subscribe and share it with your friends and, stay in touch for like more amazing
Yeah.
content coming
Yes, do
soon.
subscribe. I
Thank
would
you.
also recommend that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Kumar. Thank you.